Hello, it's Dr. Clark here, and today we're going to be looking at adding using concrete, pictorial and abstract representations. If we start with our generalization for adding, we have part, add to make the whole. So we've got one number under the other number, add them together, there's our symbol, and that makes our whole. This is the bar model whole, and we're not going to be using that today because it doesn't actually help us add our two parts together, which is what we're looking at. We are going to be using straws, dienes and pictorial representations to take us to the formal written methods that we use. As always, we've got our dienes and our straws in a tray to keep them organised, and we're very disciplined in putting our things back into our tray when we've finished our calculation to make sure we don't end up with any miscellaneous bits and pieces on our table which can end up adding themselves into our calculations. I'm going to start with straws, and if I was doing this in a lesson I would start with asking the children to bundle some tens. So I'd undo all the tens before the lesson and get them to regroup into tens ready for when we start, and it just reinforces that idea of a 10 being 10 ones. I've got my calculation written down here already. I'm going to start with 41 add 26 equals. I might also say 41 add 26 is the same as, and I interchange between equals and is the same as so that the children get that idea of it being a balancing. So my first number, I have 4 tens, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 1. And then my second number, I have 2 tens and I have 6 ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's my two numbers. I can then put my ones together. Do I need to regroup? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, I don't need to regroup, so I can put my digit 7 straight into my ones column. And then I can put my tens together. I have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. So I have 6 tens. So I can put that digit in there. So my number is 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. Stop. 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67. My answer is 67. And I can then write that into my number sentence at the top. I always get the children to write their number sentences, whether they're doing concrete or they're drawing. Their number sentences have to be written next to their work. Okay, if we have a look at that with dienes, so I'm putting those back in my tray because I'm very organised. Again, we have 4 tens and 1, 1, and we have 2 tens and 6 ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. My number is 26. And once again, I can just add those together. So my ones come together. Do I need to regroup? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. No, so I can put my digit 7 in there. Put my tens together. I've got 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. So I've got 6 tens in here. My answer is 67. I can now draw my numbers. And I'm basically drawing my dienes. We don't draw straws because the 1 of a straw looks the same as a 10 of a dene. So when we're using straws, we don't draw them. When we start using dienes, we start to draw our numbers. And I'll show you how to do that now. So what we would have originally is 41, 10, 20, 30, 40, 1, and 2 tens and 6 ones, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. For my number to be 26. Now I can add those together. How many ones do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Don't need to regroup, put that down there. How many tens? 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. Don't need to regroup, put that here. So I now have 6 tens and 7 ones. My number is 67. So you can see how this is leading on to our formal methods, and if I just do that here, something that I'm sure you're already very familiar with, we have 41 add 26, 1 add 6 is 7, so I have 7 ones, I have 4 tens and 2 tens, that's 6 tens, so my answer is 67. Okay, so that's our calculation that didn't need regrouping, but if we have a look at a calculation that does, we could have something like 47 add 25. So, new calculation, put all my dienes away, and I'm going to start with my straws. I have 4 10s and 7 1s. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7, and I have 2 10s and 5 1s. 1 2 3 4 5. My number is 25. Now, once again, we can just start by adding our ones together. So I'm going to put these together. How many do we have? 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. We've got 10. How very exciting. We can group these together. Remember, straws love to be grouped. They want to be with their friends. They love being a 10. That's quite grown up when you get to be a 10 and you're a straw. So we put our band on. They can now move into the tens column. Off they go. That leaves me with only 2 1s. So I'm going to put that digit in the ones column. How many 10s have I got? If I put them all together, I've got 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. So I've got 7 10s. 7 10s and 2 1s, my number is 72. I can pop that into my number sentence. So let's have a look at that with dienes. Put the straws back, new calculation. Make our numbers again. I've got 4 10s and 7 1s. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. I've then got 2 10s and 5 1s. 1 2 3 4 5. My number is 25. I'm now going to add these together. Put them all together. How many have I got? 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. I've got 10 1s. Now I need to regroup those. The cubes like being into 10s as well. To do this, I get the children to put them in their hand and check. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. We then put our 10 into the tray and we can regroup for a proper 10. That goes into the tens columns, leaving us with our 2 1s. We've already got that written down, and we can then put our 10s together. How many have we got? 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. Stop. 71, 72. Our number is 72. So that's dienes. Now, from the dienes, we can move on to drawing. So let's draw that now. So 47, I have 4 10s and 7 1s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. My number's 47. For 25, I have 2 10s and 5 1s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. My number's 25. Now, if we look at our ones column, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We can regroup. And we do that in drawing by drawing a line through them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now you can see it's quite important that the children draw these big enough to group them and to see what's left, but not so big they use 1 page per calculation. So there's a little bit of schooling in there to show them what you're expecting them to do. I can't move my 10 when I'm drawing over into the tens column, but I can see it's a 10 for when I'm counting. So now when I write my answer, I've got 2 1s, and I've got 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. 7 10s. So again, this one can get left out if we're not careful, so make sure that the children are counting that extra one in. And there's our 72. If we finally just have a quick look at the formal method, we have 47 add 25. 7 add 5 is 12. By the time we get to this, we're hoping that the children would know that 12 can be partitioned into a 10 and a 2. My 10 is going to go up here. If you put it down here, sometimes it gets forgotten about, so put it up here. That leaves us with our 2 in our ones column. Now this 10 could be added onto our 10s, so we've got 1 add 4 is 5, add 2 is 7. 7 in our 10s column, so we've got 7 10s, 2 1s, our number is 72. If we start to see mistakes or misconceptions in the children's work, I'll move them back to using the concrete, the dienes, or even the straws, just to reinforce these things that we're teaching, to make sure they're fully in place before we move on. We use these same methods as we go up in columns, but we can also use them when we start to teach decimals, and I'll show you how to do that now. So we're going to be looking for different columns this time. So I'm going to rub out my columns, and I've got a new calculation. So my columns this time, I'm going to have ones, tenths, and hundredths. And my decimal point is in here. My number sentence for this one is going to be 1.34. 1.34 add 2.8. And you can see that I've deliberately made this column usage slightly different, so you can see how we can support the children using the concrete to get that right. We're now going to make these numbers using dienes, and this time it's going to look slightly different. This time, this is a 1. Now, by the time the children get to doing decimals, they're quite familiar with the dienes and they're confident with their columns, ones, tens, hundreds, thousands. So they can manage with the idea that this is turned into a 1 for today's lesson. So that's my ones. So if that's my ones, if I regroup this into 10 parts, they look like this. So that is now my tenths. If I regroup these into 10, they look like this. So the cubes are my 100ths. So we just need a little bit of an explanation for the children. They could practice making some numbers, and that falls into place fairly quickly. So if we now make these numbers, I have 1 1, I have 3 tenths, and I have 4 100ths. So I can very easily put those into the columns. For my next number, I have 2 1s, I have 8 tenths, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and I have no 100ths. Now, this is no longer a problem because we're using the dienes. The children put them into the right columns, and they can get used to this idea of different columns being used and they're not necessarily being a placeholder for it. Now, when we add these together, we've got 4 100ths, we've got nothing to add it to, so we've got 4 in our hundredths column. We're going to add all our tenths together. How many have we got? It's a bit squashed in our column. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Ooh, we can regroup. Put it in our hand, just check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. These go back in the tray. And I get out one of my ones, put that into my ones column. I've now just got my 110 left in my tenths column. How many ones have I got? 1, 2, 3, 4. So I've got 4. So my answer is 4.14. If we look at that in our formal method, we've got 1.34 add 2.8. The misconception is the children will put this 8 into this column where it's in the wrong place. They might put the 2 in the wrong column, they might have a placeholder, or they might just leave a column blank. So by using the dienes, we're helping these digits to get into the right numbers to start with. We can then add them together. 4, add nothing, well that's 4. 3 add 8 is 11. And that's 11 tenths. It's not 11. We need to talk about this being 11 tenths. 11 tenths is going to partition into a 1 and 1/10, as we did here. So it's really important. This comes from lots of use of this concrete material before this really gets into place. I'm now adding a 1 and a 4 and a 1 and a 2. So that's 4, and I mustn't forget my decimal point. This is quite a big step for the children, moving into the decimal columns, even though they're quite secure in the other columns. So this is really worth spending some time using the dienes and getting them used to this idea of tenths and 100ths and what they look like and what they actually mean. So what have we learned? We've learned that we can use straws, dienes, pictorial representations of our calculations to move us forward into those formal representations. We can keep using our stem sentence. I've got this many tens, I've got this many ones, to help us make those numbers and connect with those columns. And we can use this technique to teach the children how to use their decimal columns. And what we're doing here is always, we're teaching for understanding. We want the children to understand how much stuff is in each column, what that looks like, and how you add it and regroup it. So that's adding, using concrete materials, pictorial and abstract representations.